Greetings, giant nerds. I don't count that as an insult because I am amongst you. We're starting up probability, this unit, and the hardest part about probability is fractions and decimals and percents because probability uses all of them. And so today I want to just make sure we're solid on fractions, decimals, percents because at this point I don't trust your fractions and decimals and percents. So let's start this out. In your notes, put this at the top and follow along with me. Would you rather have a quarter of a half a pizza or an eighth of a whole pizza? If you drew a picture of a quarter of a half a pizza, it means you took like a half a pizza, you split it in half first, you gave this to me, and then you had the rest for you, right? And for, I don't know, you and your friends. So here's a half a pizza, right? Split into quarters. Yeah. And so would you rather have that much? This is a quarter of a half a pizza. Or would you rather take a whole pizza, split it into 8 pieces, and have one slice of that? Well, I mean, they're the same. Right. So I want us to see that a quarter of a half, right? A quarter of a half. Let's do it the other way. Let's go. Half a pizza cut into quarters. That's the same as one pizza cut into 8 pieces. So a quarter of a half a pizza is 1/8, right? Fine. I want us to be able to do this efficiently. When you are multiplying fractions, you multiply everything on the top, you multiply everything on the bottom, and you simplify if you can. So 2/3 times 5/4 is nice because you just multiply everything on top. 2 times 5 is 10, 3 times 4 is 12, and then you simplify. 5 divided by 2, 5/6, and that's as nice as we can get it. Ka-ching. Great. I hope that's not too far off. I want you to be able to perform basic operations with fractions and decimals, like add, subtract, multiply, divide, and convert between fractions, decimals, percents. Probability is heavy into fraction, decimal, and percent, so I want to make sure you're confident in that. So let's just get us doing some basics here. What's nice about multiplying fractions is that you don't need a common denominator. So 3/4 times 2 really just means here's 3/4 of a pizza, and I have 2 sets of them, right? So really I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fourths. You could write this as 3/4 times, write this as a fraction if you want, 2/1, and then you multiply everything on the top. 3 times 2 is 6, and multiply everything on the bottom. 4 times 1 is 4. 6/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if you simplify it, you can simplify this to 3 halves, right? Divide by 2, which is really 1 1/2. This is a superior answer to this in my book. And you can see that it's true because if you take this, spin it around, slide them in there, you get 1 whole pizza and a half a pizza. Sweet. Okay. Adding, subtracting fractions, they have to have like denominators. So 3/4 and 5/4 is easy to add because they have common denominators. Here's 1, 2, 3 quarters of a pizza, and here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quarters of a pizza. So you're adding like things. I have 3 ducks and 5 ducks. So really you have 8 of those, 8 ducks, right? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these quarters. And that's what this means, 8 quarters. And you could simplify 8 divided by 4 is 2. 8 quarters is 2. So if you took these and added it to what you already had, bling, 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 you should see that it does equal 2 because they're 2 whole pizzas. Ta-da! Sometimes the math gods are not kind to you and you get different denominators, unlike denominators. You have to make them like denominators because here I've got 1/2. Oh, I've got 1/2 and 5/4. and this 5/4 was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/4, but they're different pieces. I can't really figure out how to wedge these in here. It's hard for me to see. So instead, I'm going to turn this fraction into fourths. And we do that by, instead of calling half half, let's call it, let's get that out of there. Sorry, this guy needed to spin around. Something happened to him. Let's call this 1 2/4. So instead of calling this a half, I'm going to say this is really equivalent to 2/4 plus 5/4. And I'm only changing one of these, right? And then from there, you just have 2 of these and 5 more of these, right? 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in total, you should have 7 of the fourths. Often what you can do is think about how to change that denominator. I want this denominator 2. I want it to be this denominator 4. So think about what you have to multiply 2 by to get it to be 4. Well, you have to multiply by 2. So 2 times 2 gives you 4. That's great. Ka-ching. But you have to multiply top and bottom by this same thing, right? So 2 times 1 is 2. And so now you've got a fraction that's still equivalent to 1/2, but has the denominator you want, right? Okay. I also want you to be able to go back and forth between fraction and decimal and percent. So you can change a fraction to have 100 as the denominator, and that'll give you the percent sort of in a different format. Percent means something divided by, per means divided by, and the cent means 100, right? So 3/10 as a percent, you can think about as if you change this denominator to 100 by multiplying by 10, multiply bottom by 10, you'd have to multiply the top by 10. I'm multiplying by 1, so I'm really not changing anything. This 3 times 10 is 30, and 10 times 10 is 100. So this 3/10 and this are the same fraction, right? But what's nice about that is 30 per 100 is really 30%, right? So this is just this 30, and this piece is percent. This line is this line, and these are represented by those 2 dots. That's where the percent sign comes from. So this is 30%. And what's nice about that is that converting from a percent to a decimal, you can just, instead of calling it 30, you can just move the decimal 2 spaces. And now you have 0.3, right? 0.3 is the decimal, 0.3. So move the decimal point like that. And you get the decimal version, right? 30% is 0.3. So try that with a half. I know I want the denominator to be 100, so I'm going to have to multiply by 50. 22 times 50 is 100. So multiply also the top by 50, and this should give you 50 over 100, right? 50 over 100 is the same ratio as 1/2, but we can call this 50%. So this is 50%. And hopefully that's not too far for you to grasp that like half and 50% are the same. So then from here, we can take the percentage and just move the decimal 1, 2, and you get 0.5, right? I hope that's not shocking to you. But maybe you can apply it to some harder pieces. This one, same thing. Multiply the denominator by 25 to get 100, and so you'd multiply the numerator by 25 also. So this would give you 75 over 100, and that's where 75% comes from. So that's 75%, and then move the decimal point. Boom, boom, is 0.75 as a decimal. Cool. So here's the rules. If you'd like to write the rules down specifically, you can pause me and jot those down. Where I'd like you to put them is in the front, on the back of your front page on your packet. I'd like you to jot down these rules, and I want you just to think about how to convert from decimal to a percent and back. Put that here and here. How to convert from a percent to a fraction and back here and here. Decimal to a fraction. And we'll try it with, I guess we already tried it with 0.25. Let's do it with something like 0.2. Let's do it with 0.2. Just see where 0.2 goes. All right. So just for example, if we went to 0.2, that should be 20%. You could also think about it as this is in the tenths place. So this is 2/10ths, right? Is 20 is 0.2, 2 in the tenths. So to change that into a percent, you change the denominator into 100 by multiplying top and bottom by 10. So this is 20 over 100, which is 20%. 20%. So 20%. We've already turned it into a fraction. Here, it's 2 over 10, but it can be simplified, right? So 2 over 10 is divided by 2, 1 over 5. It's a fifth. So if you're going from a decimal to a percent, you can think about just multiplying by 100, right? Or move the decimal point 2 to the right. That's one way to do it. If you're going from a percent to a decimal, divide by 100 or move the decimal point 2 places to the left. If you're going from a percent to a fraction, you put this over 100 and then simplify, right? So if you had 20% trying to turn it into a fraction, you say, oh, I know 20% means 20 over 100, and then you simplify. Get rid of a 0. 2 over 10 is 1 over 5. You simplify, right? And if you're going the other way, you turn the denominator into 100, multiplying top and bottom. Great. Fractions to decimals, you long divide, or I usually first just go to a percent and then turn the percent into a decimal. That's easier. That's faster, I think, than long dividing. And going from decimal to a fraction, use the place value to write the fraction and simplify, like this. I think that's the easiest. This is 2/10ths, right? So 2/10ths. If you had 0.4, you'd say, oh, well, that's 4/10ths, a 4 in the tenths place, and then simplify 2/5. Cool? So I hope you put these in. If there's another way that you like to do it, write that in. This is just a useful tool for you to visualize how to divide. I'd like you to pause me and try these on your own. Change each of these to a fraction, decimal, percent. Get your head out of there, G. I'm still here. And then try to go. So we did this part. This is 25%. And this was fraction was 25 over 100, which simplifies to 1/4. Once you're done pausing me, change the rest of these around. That's just my mouth now. Okay, so so 40 as a decimal is 0.40. We move this decimal place 1, 2. You can call this 40%, so 40 over 100. Get rid of a 0, so 4 over 10 is 2 over 5. Great. 1 over 20, if you turn it into a decimal, you could figure that out, but I might turn it to a percent first and then turn it to a decimal. This, if you multiply top and bottom by 5, right? If you multiply by 5 and by 5, you get 20 times 5 is 100, and 1 times 5 is 5. So this is 5%. 5%. As a decimal, we just move it 1, 2 spots. So this is 0.05 as a decimal. And there's our conversions. Sweet. Same thing with 30. This is 1, 2. This is 0.3. You could think about this as 3 in the tenths place. So 3/10ths, right? And that's 3/10ths. Another way you can do it is run it from here and call this 30%. The zeros cancel and you get 3/10ths. Doesn't matter. Just want you to be able to be confident moving back and forth. All right. So you have a handful of questions, fraction, decimal, and percent. On your first page, it looks like, well, I guess it's not here. It looks like this. There's answers as well. So I'd like you to attack those for your homework. You can move on if you'd like from there. Cool? Oh, there's a problem. All right, I'll see you later. Bye.